Have you ever been called the family failure to your face? My mother's email was only 3 lines long, but it was enough to make the coffee cup in my hand slip through my fingers and shatter against the marble floor of my Miami office. Sat there, paralyzed. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone as I read those words. This year's vacation is for winners only, Serena. You aren't invited. What they don't know is that the 5-star resort charging $2,000 a night, the one my father had to pull strings just to get a room as tea as mine. I own it. And this week, they're stepping into a world where I call the shots. They have no idea that the final say on everything ... now belongs to me. But that power, it's just the surface. It's because right now a brutal plot from inside my own family is aimed straight at the heart of my empire. And I have to decide, will the truth be my weapon for revenge, or the final cure for a lifetime of hurt? The sound of porcelain hitting marble echoed through the silence, but I didn't move. The brown stain spread across my white files like a bruise. My chest tightened. My breath was shallow and fast, like I'd just run a marathon while sitting, perfectly still. The bitter scent of espresso hit me, mixing with the smell of printer ink and Chanel No. 5, the scent of success my mother taught me I had to wear. But today, it all felt like a lie. I'm not unemployed. I'm not living off anyone. I own Coastal Elegance Group, a high-end hospitality empire stretching from Miami to Napa Valley. 12 elite restaurants, 3 resorts, 15 million in annual revenue, and Serenity Keith, a luxury icon my family uses to brag to their friends. That's my crown jewel. For 8 years, I've kept my success a secret. I used to think if I stayed humble enough, they'd finally see me the real Serena, just a $sign. But that email proved it. They'll never see me unless I force them to look. This week, they're walking into my house. And for the first time in 8 years, I've decided they're going to bow down to the truth. Drop a comment, hit that subscribe button, ... and don't look away. Because the journey to leave my family speechless is about to begin. But before I tell you how, I built this empire from nothing. There's another secret, one that even my team at Coastal Elegance doesn't know. Secret that could burn everything I've built to the ground. My name is Serena Caldwell. I'm 34. I grew up in the Chicago elite, where a person's worth is measured by their bank balance and their job title. Growing up in Lake Forest, one of the wealthiest zip codes in the country, means living in a world where image is everything and affection is optional. Our family's lakeside mansion, with its manicured lawns and shimmering pool, felt more like a showroom than a home. The Caldwell name carries weight in high society, but inside those walls, warmth was as rare as sunshine in a Chicago winter. My father, Edward Caldwell, built his fortune through cutthroat Wall Street deals, often leaving smaller companies in ruins. He had a simple philosophy etched into a bronze plaque in his office: measure a person by their income and their title. I still remember dinner when I was 16. I brought home a Strata report card. He just gave a slight nod, straightened his Hermes silk tie, and asked, "How can you do better, Serena?" That was the last time I ever expected a compliment from Edward Caldwell, and 18 years later in my mother's email. I can still hear his voice echoing. Money doesn't just talk, Serena. It commands. But what he doesn't know is that someone in this family learned that lesson a little too well. Someone who is going to use his own philosophy to destroy me. And it's not a stranger, it's my own brother, Nathan. My mother, Victoria, taught me that a Caldwell woman must be a lady back straight, never show weakness, and use a smile like a weapon. My brother Nathan is a carbon copy of my father, sporting that smug grin while bragging about 9-figure deals and always ready to slide the check over to me. My sister Claire took the safe route, married rich, and turned her Instagram into a gallery of curated success. In that house, anything else was considered a failure, or worse, an embarrassment. 8 years ago, at a family dinner, I finally dropped the bomb and cut the cord on the path they'd mapped out for me. Leaving finance, I said. My voice was steadier than my shaking hands. Amidst a deathly silence that exploded into mockery and disappointment, I knew I had stepped outside the only definition of success the Caldwells ever recognized. The Caldwell family vacation has been a tradition. Since I was 10, every summer, my parents booked a luxury resort just to flex their achievements. These trips were a stage, and I slowly went from the good girl to the loser. By my late 20s, I was being relegated to the kids' table next to my cousins, my opinions brushed aside by my mother's tight-lipped smile. Serena has such a unique perspective. What they didn't know was that my job as a waitress was just the first step in my master plan. I learned the hospitality industry from the dirt up at Coastal Haven. I watched how they pampered VIPs. I found the gaps in the market, and I built back-channel ties with chefs and managers. While Nathan was bragging about Manhattan dinners, I was eating ramen in a cramped co-working space in Wynwood, using my last paycheck to pay food suppliers. There were nights I slept on an old sofa in the office, waking up at 4 a.m. to receive fresh crates of produce. On those nights, I told myself, if the American dream can start in a garage, then I can do this no matter how much my family thinks I'm just a failure. By the time I hit 30, I turned it into the Coastal Elegance Group. I kept my success under wraps, letting my employees and partners be the face of every deal. When I acquired Serenity, keyed this insanely lavish resort with its own private beach and a Michelin-starred restaurant, it became my crown jewel. The deal made headlines in all the trade mags, but my family, they didn't have a clue. Still messing around with that little restaurant, Serena? My dad asked during Christmas dinner. Something like that, I replied, swallowing my pride along with the truth. I was waiting for the right moment to let the cat out of the bag. Kept hoping they'd see me, Serena, the person, not just a title. But that hope went up in flames on a Tuesday morning at my office in Miami. I was in my corner office, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling glass, mid-meeting with my coo, Mia. My phone buzzed. I figured it was just my mom sending another Women in Business article filled with unsolicited advice. But when the email popped up, the world went silent. My eyes were glued to the screen, my brain straight up refusing to process the words. Serena, this year's vacation is only for high achievers. With your career choice, everyone would just feel awkward if you came. We'll see you at Thanksgiving. I read it once, twice, 3 times. I gasped for air, but my lungs felt like they were being crushed. My knuckles went white as I gripped the edge of my Italian oak desk, my nails digging into the wood. A cold shiver raced down my spine. My phone was vibrating in my hand, not from a call, but because I was shaking like a leaf in a Miami hurricane. The bitter smell of spilled coffee wafted up from the desk. Mixing with the scent of Chanel I'd sprayed that morning, the smell of success my mother always hammered into me. After 22 years of family trips, after all the snide remarks, I was uninvited. My hands were trembling as I set the phone down. Mia clocked it instantly. Serena, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm out, I choked out. I've been cut from the family vacation. Mia's eyes went from worried to pure rage. Your family seriously doesn't know you own one of the most prestigious restaurant groups in the country. They think I'm still a waitress. Maybe a restaurant manager if I'm lucky, I said, the irony stinging my throat. I'd never corrected them. Call your sister, Mia suggested. There has to be some kind of mistake. I nodded, even though I knew better. I waited for Mia to leave before dialing Claire. Serena, hey, Claire answered using that fake sweet voice she uses when she's uncomfortable. I was going to call you this week. Oh, really? I snapped. To personally kick me off the trip instead of letting Mom do it via email? Silence. Then, look, Mom told you. It wasn't my idea, but she's right about the theme this year. The theme being no losers allowed. Don't be dramatic, Serena, Claire said, her voice softening, but I knew what she was thinking. It's about optics. Ethan's parents and some of Nathan's partners are coming. It's going to be all business, all investment talk. You'd just be out of your element. Working in a restaurant. It's not considered real success in this circle. Didn't say that. She rushed to add, though we both knew she meant it. It's just a different world. Plus, the resort is small. We had to cap the guest list and prioritize people with common interests. Where are you guys going? Asked, already dreading the answer. We booked Serenity Key. It's the hottest spot in Key Biscayne. Apparently, it's the crown jewel of some boutique firm. Dad had to pull every string he had just to get us in because they usually only cater to billionaires and L-listers. The name Serenity Key hit me like a physical blow. They booked my resort, the very symbol of the success they think I don't. Have just to flex and exclude me. Sounds nice, I said, my head spinning. It's beyond luxury. Beachfront villas, infinity pools, Michelin chefs, the works, Claire gushed. Maybe you can join us next year when it's just a family thing. Okay, next year, I repeated, then hung up, faking a meeting. The weight of being discarded felt like lead in my chest. All those years of trying to please them, of quietly proving myself, only to be brushed off like a nuisance. I locked my office door, sat in my chair, and let myself cry for 5 minutes, something I hadn't done since I walked away from Wall Street. A knock on the door cut me off. Mia Foster walked in without waiting for an answer. Mia told me, she said, shutting the door behind her. Your family booked Serenity Key, and they have no idea it's yours. I nodded, wiping my eyes. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Mia smirked, a wicked glint in her eye. This is the perfect opportunity. Perfect, I scoffed. Being a failure in their eyes is perfect. No, Mia replied. Showing them what you've actually built is. Show up at your own resort. See the look on their faces when they realize who the real boss is. The thought flashed through my mind, but I brushed it off. It felt petty. I don't know, Mia. I hid my success because I wanted them to value me. Serena the person, not the money. And how's that working out for you? Mia arched an eyebrow. It's been 8 years. They've had a million chances to see your worth. Instead, they cut you out of a 22-year tradition to save face in front of their partners. Her words cut deep because they were true. I gave them 8 years to recognize my passion. Instead, they clung to a narrow definition of success so tightly that they threw me away. What would I even say? Surprise, the loser owns the place. Mia leaned in, her voice dead serious. Did you show up as the owner? A routine inspection with the resort manager. Let them figure it out on their own. Your family needs this wake-up call, Serena. Not just for you, but for them. The idea took root, watered by 8 years of accumulated trauma. Maybe Mia was right. Some lessons can only be learned through direct experience, not gentle reminders. I picked up the phone and called Alina Ruiz, the manager of Serenity Key since day one, the woman who would be overseeing the Caldwell family's exclusive getaway. Alina, we need to talk about the Caldwell party arriving next week, I began. Yes, the Caldwells. 7 days, checking in Thursday, Alina replied. Any issues with the itinerary, Ms. Caldwell? No issues, I said, the plan finally snapping into place. But there's a situation you need to know about. This group ... they're my family. And they have no idea I own Coastal Elegance or Serenity. Key, I want you to give them the 5-star treatment, but keep my identity under wraps until I show up. A beat of silence, I see. So you want us to keep you a secret for the whole trip? Not the whole trip, I countered. I'm coming down there. Not as a guest, but as the owner on a quality inspection. Brief the staff, but no one No one leaks my position until I'm standing right in front of them. Understood, Ms. Caldwell? When should we expect you? 2 hours after they settle in? Long enough for them to get comfortable, but before the real festivities begin. As I hung up, a surge of adrenaline replaced the ache in my chest. For 8 years, I built coastal elegance in the shadows of their judgment. It was time to drop the weight and step into the light of what I'd actually accomplished. "Really doing this?" Mia asked, watching my face harden. "I'm doing it," I said, squaring my shoulders. "It's time they see me." "Really see me?" 8 years ago, I stood in the foyer of my parents' Lake Forest mansion. Suitcases packed, my resignation already sent to the private equity firm where I'd spent 3 miserable years. My father's mocking laughter from the night before still rang in my ears. "The restaurant business, Serena. What do you know about it besides how to order off a menu?" He had no clue I'd spent 6 months working double shifts in my head, analyzing markets until sunrise, clutching a secret plan, while drowning in his corporate world. Edward Caldwell didn't realize his daughter had inherited his exact business brain. She just chose to use it for passion instead of pure, cold profit. My first step toward independence was a gamble he would never have taken. I took my inheritance money, meant for a Chicago conduit, bet it all on a tiny hole-in-the-wall spot in Miami. I named it Dawn Haven. It was the seed that grew into the Coastal Elegance Group. I worked 16-hour days, learning the business from the grease up. My mornings started before the sun, prepping menus. My afternoons were spent networking and fighting with suppliers. My nights were for cleaning floors alongside the few staff members I could barely afford to pay. "You won't last 2 months," Nathan had predicted during one tense dinner. "The novelty will wear off once you realize how exhausting playing restaurant actually is." What Nathan didn't get was that hard work doesn't feel like a sacrifice when you're building something you believe in. My hands got Callista foreign concept for a Caldwell woman. I was exhausted every single night, but for the first time in my life, I actually wanted to wake up the next morning now. As I prepped to face them at Serenity Key, those memories were my fuel. I stood in my dressing room, picking the armor for this reunion. I bypassed the power suits that used to be my shield on Wall Street and chose a crisp white linen dress with a navy silk blouse. Quiet luxury at its finest. I looked in the mirror. This wasn't about seeking their approval anymore. It was about owning my space. Back at the office, I pulled my team together. "You sure about this?" Natalie from finance asked. "Facing them for a week is going to be brutal." "That's exactly why I have to do it," I replied. "We've been playing a character for too long. It's time to be real." I did a final briefing with the Serenity Key crew. Alina had filled them in, but they needed to hear it from me. "Give them excellence," I stressed. "But when I walk in, you introduce me as the owner, not their daughter, not their sister, the owner." The night before, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing my lines. "This is my resort to aggressive, but a surprise to see you all here. Too weak." After a dozen tries, I realized no script would be enough. The truth would have to speak for itself. A text from Mia popped up. "You built a miracle on your own terms. Tomorrow, they see the real Serena. Sleep tight, boss lady." Her words leveled me out. I packed my bag with more than just clothes. My original business plan sketched in a coffee shop. The keys to Dawn Haven and a photo of my team, celebrating our 3rd anniversary. The next morning, the Key Biscayne sky was a piercing blue. I drove toward Serenity Key, where the white villas and infinity pools sparkled like diamonds. Success is living your truth, I reminded myself. I was done shrinking my light just to make them comfortable. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Where are you?" Mom's asking. "She says she has something to tell you before the trip starts. Call back. It's important." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I turned the phone off. They could wait 30 minutes later. I pulled into the private beach at Serenity Key. I parked in the spot reserved for the owner, took one deep breath, and stepped out. The sound of the waves hitting the shore and the cry of seagulls overhead steadied my heart. From the lot, Serenity Key looked like a pearl rising from the ocean. This was it. The moment everything changes. Hidden behind my sunglasses, I watched them from a distance. My father, Edward, walked with the swagger of someone who owned the place, even though he was just a guest. My mother stopped at the entrance, her eyes scanning the room, probably checking to see who was important enough to notice her arrival. Nathan was barking orders at the bellhops for no reason, and Claire was already posing at the gate, her wide-brimmed hat positioned perfectly for the gram. They were already making themselves at home, sipping cocktails by the pool. Mom lounging with a magazine, Nathan arguing with a partner on his cell, Claire snapping beach selfies. None of them knew I owned every square inch of this sand. I watched my father barely look at the staff taking his bags, just a dismissive nod. My mother started demanding adjustments to the poolside table before she'd even sat down. It confirmed what I've always known. You see a person's true colors by how they treat the help. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but my resolve was iron. After giving them 20 minutes to settle in, I made my move. My white linen dress and navy silk blouse caught the ocean breeze, the perfect balance of professional and coastal. Chic. I looked like exactly what I was, the owner on an inspection at the VIP entrance. David, my head of security, stepped in my path. He played his part perfectly. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, his voice neutral even though I saw the spark of recognition in his eyes. "This is a private area. How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Ms. Ruiz," I replied, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. Before David could say another word, my mother, Victoria, appeared on the terrace above. Her face went from curiosity to shock and then pure fury when she realized it was me. She practically sprinted down to the entrance to cut me off. "Serena," she hissed, keeping that fake socialite smile plastered on her face while her eyes stayed ice-cold. "What on earth are you doing here?" I was very clear this trip is for the successful members of this family. We have important guests, Nathan's partners, Ethan's family. You understand, right? This is not the time for one of your ... little stunts. The sting of her words flared up for a split second, but it was quickly snuffed out by the power of what was coming next. Before I could even open my mouth, Alina Ruiz appeared right behind her. "Ms. Caldwell," Alina said, her voice dripping with respect. "We didn't expect you so early. Everything is ready for your walkthrough." My mother froze. Her smile didn't just fade. It evaporated. "You know my daughter?" she asked, her voice hitting a sharp, shaky note. "Of course," Alina replied, cool as a cucumber. "Ms. Caldwell is the owner of the Coastal Elegance Group." "There must be a mistake," my mother insisted, her voice trembling. I didn't say a word. I just reached into my bag and pulled out the master key card for Serenity Key, the Coastal Elegance logo shimmering in the sun. I looked her dead in the eye. No fear left. None. "You were right about one thing, Mom. This vacation is only for high achievers," she started to stammer. I didn't let her finish. "And since I am the sole owner of Serenity Key ... I let the silence hang there, heavy and suffocating. Nathan wandered over from the pool, cocktail in one hand and a towel over his shoulder. "Serena, what are you doing here?" Mom said, "So I am the one who gets to decide who in this family is actually successful enough to stay here tonight?" The cocktail glass slipped right out of Nathan's hand, shattered on the marble floor. Smash, a perfect echo of my coffee cup from 3 days ago. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. My mother's mouth hung open, a rare sight for Victoria Caldwell. The wine glass in her hand tilted, and the red liquid spilled across the pristine white tablecloth like an open wound. Her eyes darted from the key in my hand to Elena's respectful bow, then back to me. Her entire life's work of building the Caldwell image crumbled right there. In the very place she planned to flaunt it, my father stepped up, his annoyance turning into total confusion. "What is this?" he asked, looking back and forth between Elena and me. He looked at the business portfolio Elena handed over. The man who taught me that money commands suddenly looked very small in his expensive suit. For the first time in my life, I saw his hands shake as he realized the daughter he discarded was the one holding the family's fate in her hands. Ms. Caldwell owns Coastal Elegance, Alina explained. Serenity Key is the crown jewel of her portfolio. Nathan, Claire, and Ethan all crowded around, drawn by the commotion. Serena owns this place, Claire gasped, gesturing wildly at the resort. Not just Serenity Key, Alina added, her voice full of pride. She owns the entire group. It's one of the top luxury hospitality firms in the country. I brushed past my mother and stepped into the main lobby, my heels clicking on the marble I had personally picked out. The restaurant business has been good. To me, I said, unable to hide a bit of the bite in my voice. Alina, I want a full briefing with the staff before we start the walkthrough. My family backed away, clearing the path. My father stood frozen, his knuckles turning white as he gripped his whiskey glass. In 40 years on Wall Street, Edward Caldwell had never misread an investment. But right now, standing in front of his daughter, the one he'd written off. As a total loss, he realized he'd just missed out on the biggest deal of his life. My mother recovered first, scurrying after me. Serena, honey, why didn't you tell us? We've always been so proud of you. The hypocrisy made me stop in my tracks. I turned around and looked her dead in the eye. Proud, Mom? 48 hours ago, you told me I wasn't successful enough to be invited. For 8 years, this family saw me as a failure until you found out I own Coastal Elegance. The only thing that changed is your definition of success. Her face flushed, her hand tightening around her cocktail. You're being unfair. We didn't know the scale of this hobby. My company, I corrected her, my voice like steel, with 50 employees, a chain of restaurants from Key Biscayne to Napa Valley and Aspen, and revenue that would make your head spin. But that satisfaction only lasted until the end of the day. Right before Nathan started a brawl that nearly got Serenity Key shut down and pushed me toward a decision that could tear my family apart. I turned back to my Coastal Elegance team standing by. Thank you for getting Serenity Key ready to our standards, I said. This trip is personal, but I expect the same excellence as always. As the staff got back to work, I noticed my family trailing behind, standing awkwardly in the lobby. The power had shifted. I've prepared the Serenity Suites for everyone, I announced. Unless you'd prefer I arrange for you to stay somewhere. Else this week, you're staying. My father asked, his voice finally returning. It's my resort, I replied simply. And apparently, I'm successful enough to join the club. Our first dinner at Serenity Key was a social minefield, more complex than any merger I'd ever negotiated. I showed up late on purpose, flipping my habit of being early just to establish who was in charge. When I walked into the dining room, they were already seated around the walnut table I'd commissioned from a local artist last year. The room went dead silent as I entered. My father was at the head of the table. Of course he was. Edward Caldwell. Always sits at the head, no matter whose house he's in. I stopped. I looked at him. I looked at the chair. Excuse me, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. That's my seat. 5 seconds passed. 10. The whole room held its breath. Then, my father stood up. Slowly, he gave up the seat. For the first time in 34 years, I was at the head of a Caldwell table. Chef Javier had prepared a signature seafood feast. Local Key Biscayne lobster and seasonal greens. I couldn't help but smirk, knowing this dish is something I'd approved. For the menu just last month was being served to the people who thought I was just playing restaurant. The food is exquisite, my mother said after a few minutes of agonizing silence. You must be very hands-on, Serena. It was a classic move, her trying to find her footing after the shock. I believe in knowing every corner of my business, I replied, sipping the white wine I'd hand-selected. From the menu to the thread count of the napkins. The aesthetic is very on brand, Claire chimed in. Now that I think about it, it's so your style. It's not style. I corrected her gently. It's intentional luxury. But yes, I sign off on every design choice. My father, silent until now, finally spoke up. How many properties do you currently hold? Typical Edward Caldwell trying to value the business so he could rank it in his head. Coastal Elegance has 12 restaurants. And 3 resorts, I answered. 2 more projects are breaking ground in Malibu and Vail. Always had a head for business, he declared, his tone shifting into something that sounded like praise. Must be the Caldwell genes. I'd say I did it despite the Caldwell expectations. Not because of them, I shot back, refusing to let him take credit for the success he once mocked. Nathan, who had been looking sour since I revealed the truth, tried to regain some ground. 12 locations is impressive for a boutique firm. You thought about scaling faster? With the right capital and strategic partners, you could double that in 18 months. His pitch was exactly what I expected, prioritizing hypergrowth over quality. We scale at the pace of our excellence, I explained. Our guests choose us because we aren't a cookie-cutter franchise. Nathan started to argue, but he was cut off by Chloe, my cousin and a sharp analyst on Wall Street. Before Chloe could speak, I caught Nathan glancing at his phone under the table. His eyes weren't curious. They were calculating. His phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen, then stood up. Excuse me, Dad's calling urgent work. But as he stepped out onto the terrace, I saw my father sitting right there, also on his phone, texting someone. They exchanged a brief nod, a silent agreement, a plan I wasn't privy to. I think what you've built is incredible, Serena, Chloe said, her voice sincere. Creating something that reflects your values and still wins commercially. That's the dream. Her words softened the room. Thanks, Chloe, I replied. After dinner, I took them on a tour, leading them through the terrace, the restaurant, and the spa. I explained the design with the same pride I used to pitch investors. The terrace was renovated last winter, I said, looking out over the Key Biscayne waters. It was a massive investment, I added, responding to my mother's comment about the cost. But our guests pay for perfection. The tour wrapped up on the terrace where Maria had cocktails waiting. My father gestured to the empty chair beside him. I sat down at the small table overlooking the moonlit ocean. Your mother and I? We underestimated your business mind, Serena, he said, his voice low, almost an apology. You underestimated? Me, I corrected him, my voice sharp as a razor. It's not just my business mind. You missed my grit, my vision, and how I define success. He swirled his whiskey, a flash of surprise in his eyes. You hid it from us? You didn't give us a chance to see. Would a chance have changed anything? I asked, refusing to back down. Would knowing I owned Coastal Elegance have made you care about my happiness? Or would it just have bumped me from failure to acceptable in the Caldwell hierarchy? He stayed silent. We only wanted the best for you, he finally said. No, Dad, you wanted what fit your vision of the best. There's a massive difference. Before he could answer, Alina Ruiz, the manager of Serenity Key, hurried toward us, her face tight with stress. Ms. Caldwell, she said, her voice calm but urgent. There's a serious situation at the neighboring villa. Nathan, he'd been drinking. He got into an altercation with a group of young men. It turned physical. Someone's nose is broken and Nathan's hand is injured. Security separated them, and an ambulance is on its way. According to the staff, a local guest named Ryan Blake had mocked Nathan about the Caldwell name. And the situation just exploded. The air felt like it froze solid. The family members nearby turned, eyes glued to me. Thank you, Alina, I said. Standing up, my voice was level, commanding. Ensure security has the area locked down. Coordinate with the hospital and keep the other guests away. I'm trusting you to handle the ground floor. Alina nodded, her eyes showing absolute faith in her boss. My mother turned pale, rushing forward. What about Nathan? What is happening? My father frowned, his eyes shifting to me, waiting for a reaction. Nathan appeared with security, clutching his injured arm, his face flushed with booze and rage. "They provoked me," he screamed. "Enough, Nathan," I said, my voice cracking like a whip. "Sit down and shut up until I'm finished." He stiffened, clearly not used to his little sister barking orders, but my look made him back off. The family watched, stunned, as I gave Alina instructions: get the corporate lawyers on the phone. Prepare an incident report. Want an update from the hospital in 30 minutes. That night, the atmosphere at Serenity Key was suffocating. My father, Edward, tried to find common ground by asking about company operations, but his voice betrayed his insecurity. My mother, Victoria, was oscillating between worrying about Nathan and the shame this would bring to the family. Nathan, hand bandaged, was still asking competitive questions about my firm. Desperate to claw back some status, when I finally got to my room, I was drained but wired. For 8 years, I lived to live Zarina, the daughter, and Serena, the CEO. This brawl was just a metaphor for the tension that had finally blown up. I knew tomorrow would be a mess, but I'd spent 8 years prepping for crises exactly like this. Asterisk at dawn, the management office became my command center. Alina reported back, her voice tense but professional. "Ryan Blake, the son of the local police chief, has a broken nose and needs emergency surgery. Estimated costs are $35,000. Chief Blake is threatening criminal charges against Nathan and wants to shut down Serenity Key for a safety inspection if he isn't satisfied. Plus, reporters are already at the gate. The hashtag Serenity Chaos is starting to trend." The office door burst open. My father, face red with fury and fear, stormed in. "Serena, what the hell is this? Nathan is hurt. The cops are everywhere, and your resort is becoming a laughingstock. Are you trying to humiliate this family?" The tone in his voice wasn't just anger, it was fear. Fear of losing the Caldwell reputation he'd spent his life building. "We're handling it," I said firmly. Nathan hit the police chief's son. "I've called the lawyers, and Alina is coordinating with the hospital. I have a plan. A plan," he spat. "If they sue, we're finished. I'm hiring my own legal team." Nathan, still drunk and angry, yelled, "I'm not apologizing to that kid. He started it." My mother rushed in, her hair a mess, eyes wild with panic. "Nathan, my baby, they'll put you in jail." Claire whispered, "Everyone online is mocking us. ... "That's enough," I shouted, the volume making everyone go dead silent. "I've run Coastal Elegance for 8 years. I've handled crises 10 times worse than this. Ryan is being taken care of. The lawyers will be here in 30 minutes. And I am not letting Serenity Key or this family go under. Now go to your rooms and let me work." My mother shook her head, clutching her silk scarf. "Serena, you don't understand. The family name is everything." For the first time, I saw Victoria Caldwell truly break. The perfect lady mask shattered, revealing the deep-seated fear underneath. "Come with me," I said more gently, leading her to the private lounge next door. I handed her a glass of water as she sat down, her hands trembling. "I don't understand why you chose this life," she choked out. "Living in the middle of all this risk, scandal, lawsuits, failure." "The difference, Mom," I replied. "You see risk as the enemy. I see it as an opportunity to adapt, to lead. I don't try to control everything. I learn how to work with it. You only see me in your world. You've never bothered to see me in mine." Alina knocked, announcing the lawyers had arrived. Before I stood up, my mother reached out and squeezed my hand, a sudden, genuine gesture. "I've always been terrified of losing control," she confessed. "The reputation, the status. I was just scared of being judged." "I know," I whispered. "But even in the middle of this mess, I'm still here, and we're going to be okay." The negotiation with Chief Blake went down at 2 p.m. He was a powerhouse of a man with eyes as cold as a February morning. "My son is in the hospital because of your brother," he growled, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. $100,000. A public apology. You have 10 minutes. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice as cool as a boardroom. I pushed his paper aside and replaced it with Ryan's personnel file. Coastal Elegance will cover the full $35,000 in medical bills, I said, locking eyes with him. And I'm offering Ryan a management internship at our Key Biscayne location. Real career path, not just a payout. My son's broken nose is only worth an internship, he challenged. Chief Blake? I said, not flinching. $100,000. And a messy lawsuit will turn Ryan into a victim for the rest of his life. My offer turns him into a winner. What do you actually want for your son? The room went dead silent. Blake stared at the file, then out the window at the vultures, reporters waiting outside. Finally, he let out a long, defeated sigh. Your Sharp Caldwell deal. Deal? I said, shaking his hand. By that afternoon, the press release was out. The hashtag Serenity Chaos started to die down. When I walked back into the meeting room where my family was waiting, the way they looked at me had shifted entirely. My father, Edward, the man who taught me that money commands, now looked at me like a formidable business partner. Nathan sat in the corner, his ego completely deflated. And my mother. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't just shock. It was pride, heavily mixed with the shame of how she'd treated me. They didn't have to say a word. The silence said it all. For the first time in 8 years, they saw Serena Caldwell not through their lens of prejudice, but as a CEO. Later on the terrace, with the ocean breeze whipping through the teak railings, my mother pulled me aside. Why hire Ryan Blake, Serena? He's a troublemaker, and his father tried to sue us. I smiled, a bit of the strategist in me showing. I saw his file, Mom. Ryan's unemployed. He has a degree, but he's just drifting. By calling the fight a misunderstanding and hiring him, I turned an enemy into an ally. If the chief's son works for me, the chief protects Serenity Key. It's not just a hire. It's an insurance policy. That's how I protect the empire. My mother was stunned. She nodded slowly. I'm seeing a different Serena now. I thought you needed Wall Street to succeed, that you needed Chicago to be respected. I was wrong. I was wrong to send that email, and I was wrong to judge you by my yardstick. Maybe you only saw me through your own reflection, I replied softly. Her eyes welled up. I was so afraid you'd fail, that people would laugh. But you built this 12 restaurants, 3 resorts, $15 million on your own terms. I've been wrong for 8 years, Serena. That admission nearly broke me. Claire, standing nearby, stepped forward tentatively. Serena, I'm in awe of you. Been turning in fashion, but everyone keeps telling me I have to do finance to be respectable. How did you just walk away from Wall Street and build this? I smiled. I started by bussing tables. I learned every step, and I wasn't afraid to bleed for it. Victoria looked at Claire. Listen to your sister, Claire. Serena's path is the one worth following. A simple compliment, but to me it was. The world, that evening, the vibe at Serenity Key finally softened. Edward asked about my government partnerships with genuine respect. Nathan asked about my restaurant strategy. The competitive edge finally gone from his voice. Claire talked about her fashion dreams with glowing eyes. It was a sunset dinner filled with laughter, not judgment. The brawl had been a storm that washed away the fake masks, revealing a family I never thought I'd have. I thought the fight was the final test. I thought after seeing me handle a crisis, they finally saw the real me. But the piece was a lie. At 11 p.m., when everyone had turned in, Alina walked into my office. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Miss Caldwell, she said, her voice trembling, there's something you need to see about Nathan. She handed me a thin envelope. Inside was an email. The time stamp. 3 weeks before the vacation. From Nathan to a rival investment firm. The subject line, opportunity to acquire coastal elegance at a steal. My hands shook as I read the lines. ... My sister is incompetent. The Vale project is a sinking ship. If you pull your funding now, I can guarantee a buyout of the entire group at 30% below market value. I will take over as CEO. Serena will be placed in a suitable position. The room started spinning. Lena stood there waiting for my move. My lawyer is on the line, she said softly. This is a massive breach of non-compete agreements. If we go public with this, Nathan's career is over. The Wall Street Journal will tear him apart. I looked out the window. Nathan was out on the terrace, laughing with my father. 2 hours ago, he told me my company was impressive. Now, I knew it was all an act. The lawyer's voice crackled over the speaker. Serena, you have 24 hours to decide. You sue him into the ground, or you stay silent. I looked down at the email. Then back at Nathan laughing, clinking. Champagne glasses with my dad like he'd already won. But the nightmare wasn't over. Alina walked in again, her face even paler than before. Ms. Caldwell. I just found this in the old archives. An email from ... from your father. Sent the same day as Nathan's. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The first line made the room spin. Ensure Nathan is made CEO. Serena can keep a symbolic title if she behaves. I looked out at the terrace. My father and Nathan were laughing, clinking glasses, both of them, plotting against me. It turned out the recognition from earlier that afternoon was just a performance to lull me into a false sense of security before they swallowed up 8 years of my life's work, 20-4 hours. If I leaked both emails, my father and Nathan would lose everything, their careers, their reputations, and probably each other. If I stayed silent, I'd be betraying 8 years of blood, sweat, and tears and handing them the weapons to strike. Again, I stood alone in my gorgeous office, realizing that no matter how beautiful Serenity Key was, it couldn't hide the rot at the heart of my family. I looked at the gold key on my desk, then out at the dark ocean. My decision tonight wouldn't just decide the future of coastal elegance, would be the end of Serena, the daughter who spent her life starving for the Caldwell's love. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovered over the send button to the board of directors. Then I looked out the window. My mother was sitting alone, her hands trembling as she held a teacup. She was wearing the necklace my father gave her for their 30th anniversary. She had no idea about the emails. If I did this, she'd lose the 2 most important men in her life in a single night. And I realized this wasn't just a business decision. This was a decision about who I am. Was I the daughter still desperate for a scrap of family, or the CEO ready to burn it all down for justice? I watched Nathan and my father laughing on the terrace, then looked down at the papers in my hand. I didn't feel rage. I felt a strange, cold peace. I walked out. I went to my mother first. Mom, I said softly, I need you to witness this. I laid the printed emails on the table in front of my father and Nathan. No explanation. A heavy silence filled the air, broken only by the sound of the waves. This isn't an ultimatum, I said, my voice clear and steady. This is proof that we've gone too far. You have a choice. Leave this resort and act like none of this ever happened, or stay, but on one condition. From this second on, we rebuild. Everything on a foundation of real respect. Respect for each other's paths, decisions, and values. If not, these emails will do the talking for me. My father bowed his head, unable to meet my eyes. Nathan's face went ghost white, his mocking mouth slammed shut. My mother gripped my hand, tears falling silently, not from fear, but from a painful, belated understanding. I didn't shred the papers. I didn't hit send. I just let them see that I held the cards. True power isn't about the strike, about having the strength to destroy someone and choosing not to. That choice and the boundary I just drew was what finally forced them to change. 8 years of searching for their approval, and I finally realized it was never going to come from them. It came from me having the balls to stand here today and declare that my worth doesn't need a single person in this room to sign off on. On our final morning at Serenity Key, I woke up early and stepped onto the main deck. The sun was just peeking out, painting the horizon in gold and pink. I heard light footsteps behind me. It was my mother, Victoria. She'd ditched her usual hour-long beauty routine and looked simpler, softer, in a white linen shirt. "It's beautiful," she said, taking the coffee I offered. "I see why you love it here." "It has its moments," I replied, smiling. She nodded, and for the first time, the silence felt good. The brawl, the negotiation, the tension, it had shifted something between us. "I've thought a lot about family. Traditions," she said. "These trips were supposed to bring us together. But I realized we defined success so narrowly that we couldn't see anything outside our own expectations." That admission was the first real bridge she'd ever built. "Will you host the family vacation next year?" she asked. "On your terms, of course." "I'd like that," I said, knowing the question was her way of saying, "I'm sorry." Later that morning, I caught my father alone on the upper deck. I looked over the Coastal Elegance filings. He started, "Your growth trajectory is impressive. But what struck me most is that you did this without the Caldwell name. You built this on pure merit." "I needed to know I could win on my own," I explained. He nodded slowly. "I spent my whole career believing there was only one path to real success. Watching you this week, it opened my eyes. I might not fully get your choices, Serena, but I respect what you've built. More importantly, I respect the woman you've become." That afternoon, as Serenity Key prepared to see the guests off, the family gathered on the terrace. Nathan walked up as I was checking the end-of-day reports. "So, my little sister turns out to be the secret success story," he remarked, but the usual bitterness was gone. "Success isn't a zero-sum game, Nathan," I replied. "Your achievements don't diminish mine, and mine don't threaten yours." "Coastal Elegance is impressive," he admitted, though I saw a flicker of the old envy in his eyes. "Though I still think smaller scales are easier to manage," he paused. "I've always compared myself to everyone else. That's how Dad raised us, right? To be the best, okay? But we don't have to keep that tradition alive." "Maybe not," he agreed, his voice hesitating. "What you've got here is different from what I would have built, but it's impressive, Serena." I watched my family drive away, each of them carrying their own reflections from this unexpected week. I felt a sense of freedom that no business achievement had ever provided. The true measure of success wasn't the Serenity Key sand beneath my feet, but the inner peace that comes from living authentically. Before leaving the resort, I ran into Claire near the beach. "Serena," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement, "I've been thinking about my own path. Love fashion, but the family keeps pushing me toward finance." "How did you find the courage to walk away from Wall Street?" "I started from the bottom, bussing tables, learning every step of the way without fearing failure," I told her. "It took 8 years to build this from nothing." "You can find your own way too, Claire." She nodded, her eyes bright with hope. "Want to try?" "Thank you, Serena." As the sun dipped below the horizon, my family stood on the terrace watching the ocean shimmer. The brawl, much like a Miami hurricane, had swept away the fake masks and opened up new connections. I had called it a misunderstanding to negotiate with Chief Blake, but in doing so, I didn't just save Serenity Key. I built a bridge to the local community by bringing Ryan on board. 8 years ago. I walked away from the blueprint my family had drawn for me, terrified but determined. That journey was a minefield of challenges mixed with brilliant victories and painful scars. For years, I carried the weight of their disapproval, letting it dim even my proudest achievements. I kept Coastal Elegance a secret, hoping that one day they would value me for who I was, not for what I had. That hope turned out to be naive, but perhaps not entirely wrong. Revealing my success changed how they looked at me, giving them an external metric they could finally understand. But more importantly, this week at Serenity Key showed them who I really was. Far beyond the financial figures, a woman of substance, faith, and grit. Before the final checkout, we gathered on the main terrace one last time. Claire stepped up, a shy but radiant smile on her face. Serena, I've been thinking about what you said, about finding work that actually means something. I've decided to look for a fashion internship this summer instead of going back to that finance firm. That's amazing, Claire, I replied, my heart warming. If you need it, I can introduce you to a few key players in the industry. Really? You'd do that? Claire beamed a flash of genuine excitement that was so different from the guarded Caldwell face she usually wore. My mother, Victoria, overheard us and stepped in. Serena has always followed her own compass, she remarked, her tone surprisingly supportive. Maybe more of us should try doing that. These tiny moments of connection, however imperfect, were the start of a healing process that my family had delayed for far too long. They might never fully endorse every choice I make, but they have finally started to see Mitha, real Serena Purr, for the first time as we said our goodbyes. I realized that success was never actually about proving my worth to them. It was about having the courage to explore and remain steadfast in my own definition of a life well lived. The real yardstick isn't the buildings I own or the revenue numbers. It's the peace I feel when I wake up every morning, knowing I am true to myself. That priceless lesson, paid for with 8 years of grit, is something I would never trade. As I watched the family car disappear into the distance, I felt a new kind of freedom, the freedom that comes from dropping the burden of needing someone else's approval. Same time next year. My father, Edward, asked as he prepared to leave. The question held so many more layers than just the words. Yes, I replied with a genuine smile. But next time, everyone gets an official invitation. Have you ever had? To prove to someone that your definition of success was valid, even when it didn't match their expectations. Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is stay the course on our own path, even when others don't understand it. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys about finding your own way. Thank you for riding with me, and remember, true success is measured by your own happiness, not someone else's yardstick.